Good morning. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I'm Andrea with Happy Cloud Creations. I am jumping on today because we are doing the last week of the Rainier Echoes Quilt Along. So if anybody has questions along the way, please let me know. This week we are basting, quilting, and binding our quilts. I know you might not be able to finish that all in a week. It is a lot of work. But for this week's giveaway, you just need to post one of those things. So post a photo of you basting your quilt, post a photo of you quilting your quilt, or post a photo of you binding your quilt, or if you're super fast and speedy, post a picture of your completed quilt. Any of those will work to be entered into this week's giveaway. So I'm just going to get right into it. If anybody has questions along the way, please let me know. I'll try to make sure to check Instagram and Facebook. So the finishing instructions start on page, it's usually the very last page of the pattern. It starts on page 11 of the pattern. This kind of just gives you basic instructions to finish up your quilts. You definitely can do it however you want to do it. These are just a suggested way of completing your quilt. So first off, you need to buy some backing fabric and batting. I forgot my batting in the other room, but I prefer cotton batting. I've been using the Warm and Plush by the Warm Company. Oh, good. Some people are jumping on. Wasn't sure if anybody was jumping on today. Hi, hi, hi. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Sue. Got some people over on Instagram too. Hi. Hi, Kelsey and Deborah. All right. So, I was going to go buy some backing fabric, and I'm like, this is an 80 by 80. So I would have needed like $50 worth of backing fabric. I'm like, okay. Or do I go to my tried and true sheet? I know a lot of quilters don't like sheets because if you get too high of a thread count, it can make your needle dull. So I have several times used the Target Threshold Ultra soft flat sheet, because all you have to do is buy one flat sheet, and it ended up only being $13.99. And then you have the Target card, you get 5% off. So I first bought this one hoping it would be like the color in here, and it ended up being just the wrong color, too gray. So then I ordered another one. I figure I'll just use that for a different quilt. And I got this navy. It's like a light navy, and that kind of actually matches the little dashes in the navy. So this is what I'm going to use for my backing. I got a queen size for this 80 by 80. And then I'm going to use Warm and Plush batting for it. So when you go to baste your quilt, you can have a long armor baste it, just thread baste it, which I think is rare, unless you know you have a long armor that's your friend. You can spray baste it, or you can pin baste it. I like spray basting mine. If you're going to pin baste, I recommend 3 to 4 inches apart doing a pin. These ones work really well. They're a curved pin, and they're made for basting. So if you can see them, makes it easier to go through all 3 layers. First, you're going to want to lay your backing fabric on the floor, a hard surface. Some people use their driveway if it's clean. Nice and taut, not super stretched, just, you don't want any wrinkles in it. And then I like to lay out my batting and cut it to size. And then I put my quilt top on it just to make sure it's all good. First, I usually do the quilt top and then cut the batting to you're going to want at least 2 to 3 inches around. If you're sending it to a quilt or a long armor, they're going to want 3 inches on all sides. Sometimes I can get away with 1 inch to 2 inches since cotton doesn't smush down a lot and squish outward. about an inch is okay. So that's why sometimes when I do a baby size quilt, if my baby size quilt is only 40 by 40, I just use a 42 width by fabric um, for the quilt backing, which is nice since you don't have to piece it. So you're gonna lay your backing down tight, and then I just have the batting down. And when I do the spray based, I've used several so far. I've used June Taylor. It's a one you can get at Joann Fabrics. They changed the formula, and I do not like the new formula. They said they were going to change it back. The new formula that this one is way too sticky. It leaves my hands sticky. Like you can smell the basting after you wash the quilt one time, and I don't think that's good. So they said I emailed them and they said they were going to change it. So I have not gotten a new bottle of their spray based. I've used this Sulky K2000 temporary spray adhesive. I really like that it's not super smelly. The only issue I had with this is it is a temporary spray. So if you're going to use this, you need to make sure you're going to quilt this within a couple days, because what it says, it disappears within 2 to 5 days. So one of my quilts, it takes me a few days because sometimes I only get like an hour to do any sewing in a day. So I ended up having to pull it apart and respray it because it just was not sticky enough. It did not last long enough. But this is great if you're doing a baby quilt and you know you're going to get it done in a couple days. I would recommend this one. I received a lot of suggestions to use this 505 temporary spray. So that's what I'm going to be trying for this one, my Rainier Echoes quilts. I'm hoping tomorrow morning I can wake up at 5 when my husband goes to work and try to spray baste it before the kids get up. Once the kids get up, I feel like I have no time to sew. And so I'm not getting as much done now that they're at home doing school at home. So I'm hoping tomorrow morning I can try this out and I'll let you know how I liked it. I've heard a lot of great reviews about this, so I'm excited to try it. I'll do that tomorrow. So what I like to do is put the backing down, put the batting down, and then I pull it halfway up, and then I spray the batting, and then I kind of just like, sometimes I'll hold the batting with one hand and then just kind of spread it out with my hand like this. And then I kind of like spread, like you're kind of swimming. Emily Dennis has a great tutorial. There's a link to it in my blog post. This blog post, if you didn't read it yet, it has links to tutorials for every single step. Since I can't show you them in depth on this live video, I've linked to tutorials for basting, quilting, and binding on my blog. So make sure you go check out the blog if you have not. Emily Dennis has a great one on her highlights in her Instagram that shows from taping it down to the quilt top. So you basically do the same thing. Do half of the batting, do the other half of the batting, and then you're going to lay your quilt top down, smooth it out, pull up half of it, spray the batting again, and then smooth it out. I like to try to make sure all my seams are straight when I'm smoothing it out, and make sure you're tucking all the dark threads into the dark areas, because you don't want dark threads going over into the white or the yellow, whatever color you used. But try to keep the dark threads in the dark area. I don't go around trimming my threads, which I should. If I did that, that would probably save me a lot of time. Or not, I don't know. I feel like just shoving them into the dark areas saves me a little time. Does anyone have any questions about basting? I know some people that have allergies can't do the basting because of the fumes, but I noticed I try to keep my windows open because I usually do it. I'm in my dining room today. That's why the lighting's a little different today. So I do it in my dining room. I push my table out of the way and I open my windows so that I get a little bit airflow so the fumes don't get to me. So once your quilt is basted, it's time to quilt it, which I forgot my Hera marker. So I like to go around my quilt with a Hera marker. You can also use the dull side of a butter knife, and I will go around it and mark my lines. It all depends on what kind of quilting you want to do. Some people like to free motion quilt. Some people like to straight line quilt. Some people like to stitch in the ditch. I have not free motion quilted yet, guys. I still have not done that. That is a goal of mine, but I want to start small like on placemats. So I'm hoping to do that someday. Who knows when. I really do want to make placemats for my table, so maybe I can do that this summer after this quilt along's done. My go-to is top to bottom quilting, straight line quilting, about an inch apart. So I basically do a seam at the top of the quilt, and then I roll it up, and then I just start going about a ½ inch. Let's see where it is. ½ inch from the seam with my walking foot. So my walking foot, if I just bump it like a tiny bit away from the seam, just a tiny bit away from the seam, it's about a ½ inch. And so that's what I do, top to bottom, ½ inch from each seam. If your seams are 2.5 inches, then it gives you an inch apart. I did the math. So what I usually do is I'll just do like ½ inch from this seam, and then I'll come over to this seam, do a ½ inch, and then after I've done the whole quilt, I'll come back and go in between those lines. So that's the way it's already secured, and we're just filling in those long lines, and it makes it feel like it goes a lot faster. Straight line, top to bottom, is the fastest way, one of the fastest ways to quilt. You can even do it further apart. Look at your batting. It'll tell you how far apart you need your quilting to be. I just like the texture 1 inch gives. This one's been washed once, and then I threw it in a tote, and so it's kind of smushed down just because it's been folded up in a tote, because I'm not using this one. I plan on selling this one once things open up a little more in my state. I'll open my handmade things back up. But top to bottom straight line is a great one to do, especially if you're a beginner quilter. It's really easy. And I like a walking foot with a guide. My guide helps me to keep my lines straight. So I'll line it up with either a seam, or if I do my hair markers with my ruler, I'll line the guide up with that line that I drew. It makes quilting go by really easy. Another one that is super easy is straight line top to bottom. This is my happy block swap that we did with National Quilter Circle. I think it might have been the last quilt along that we did, right? I did a top to bottom zigzag, which it's a multi-zigzag stitch. So it kind of goes 3 stitches one way, 3 stitches the other way. You can see that. Just top to bottom. So it kind of gives it a little texture and a little more movement. And it looks cool, but it was super easy. Top to bottom quilting. This one belongs in our living room. The kids chose for us to keep that one. And this is my quilt. I've shown you this one before. I think we did a quilt along with this one too, the Happy Flower Garden quilt. So this one is a straight line quilting, but I took a invisible or a disappearing ink pen, and I drew a line from, I think it started here. I drew a wavy line, a big wavy line, all down the center of it, of the quilt. And then I took my foot and lined this guide up with it so that the wave just continues across both sides of the quilt. So looking at it from a distance, it looks cool. It has this huge wave, and it still gives it that nice texture. That's another reason why I like cotton batting, because when it dries, it gets a little crinkled and cozy. At first it might be a little stiff, but the more you wash and dry it, it gets softened up and it's nice and cozy. So a lot of times I will use that the flat sheet. That's what I use for this one, and it's just nice and soft. Sheets, you can find some really pretty sheets out there too if you don't want just a plain solid, but I like those because they're only $13.99, and that's a great price for a backing. All right, so we got our basting and our quilting done. Next, we need to put the binding on. Wish I left my binding in the other room. So the binding is the edge of your quilt. And before you do that, you're going to have batting overhanging and backing. So what I like to do is I just take a square ruler. If you don't have a square ruler, you can do it with your long acrylic, but I like to put it on the corners and line it up. And just make sure each corner is squared. And then I take my long acrylic and butt it up to my square ruler, and then just make sure all the sides are straight. I cut all that excess off because we're going to be adding our binding to it. Which on here, it kind of gives you a basic binding tutorial. On the blog, I forgot to mention, on the blog, there is a tutorial for straight line quilting, machine quilting. There's a tutorial, link to a tutorial for free motion quilting, and a link to hand tying a quilt. Susie Quilts, Susie Williams from Susie Quilts has a great hand tying tutorial for quilts. The binding, I also have a tutorial on there from Susie Quilts. I think it's one of the best visual aids to watch a tutorial like that, because I know for me, I'm a very visual person, so sometimes just reading something like that can be a little confusing. So it's great to watch that tutorial. I recommend watching that one from Susie Quilts. But basically, you take 2.5-inch strips. You can go a little smaller. I like the 2.5 inch because it ends up being nice. I think this one might actually be larger. Sometimes I go 2 3/4 because I like a large binding, and if it's not going to cut off any points, I go a little larger. But if it is going to cut off points, I go at the 2.5 inch. But you take it and you sew the ends together at a diagonal. You trim off the excess. You iron that seam down flat, and then you're going to take that whole long strip and fold it hot dog wise, so that when you're wrapping this binding around your edges, it's going to have a double layer of fabric. I know some people will just use bias tape, and that will only have a single layer of fabric on the edges of your quilt. And so I don't even remember when I made this one, but the edge is still good. There's no holes or anything. This is one of our couch quilts, so we use it all the time. So I like that double layer just so you have that extra thickness on the edge, because edges get a little more wear, I feel like, because you're putting it up on your face and stuff. So you wrap it around. Personally, I sew mine to the front. You line it up with the edge. You flip it around, and then I hand stitch it. I use I think it's called a blind stitch or whip stitch. I think it's blind stitch. So you can't even see the where the thread is. And that's my preferred way. I've tried doing machine binding before, where you stitch it to the back of the quilt, you wrap it around to the front, and then you stitch. And it did not turn out very well. So I just stick to hand binding. It's a nice relaxing thing that I can do while I sit on the couch or on my bed and watch a show with the kids. So that's what I do, my preferred method. When I'm binding, I like using little clips to keep my binding down. Some people don't use anything. Sometimes some people use those little hair clips that there's these little hair clips that are flat. I used to use those, but I got these because I wanted to try them out, and I use these for binding. And then I got I think this is from Clover, who is the sponsor this week, guys. I'll tell you about this week's giveaway in a minute. I like using a leather thimble. It has this metal thing on there, but I ended up not using the metal part. I ended up turning it around. So next time I buy one, I'm just going to get the fully leather one, because this leather pad is durable enough to help you push it in. Because if you don't, you're going to get a hole in your finger and it's going to bleed and it's going to hurt. I tried machine binding tool. It didn't work well for me either. Yeah, Kelsey, I don't know. Maybe I was going too fast and I wasn't patient enough trying to machine bind the quilt. Because other people do it and it looks great. But I just prefer hand binding. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Does anybody have any questions? about the quilts, finishing the quilts. I'm really excited to get this one done. It's so big. Like, we have a king size bed, and I think this would probably fit a queen. A queen is more like a 990 though, huh? This one's 80. So this would probably fit like a size double bed. So I plan on quilting. I got a sulky cotton and steel thread pack, which I left on my desk too, guys. I don't know. This morning was crazy. I had to go pick up groceries, so I did my online order and picked up groceries. I'm like, I gotta get back for the quilt along. So I plan on using that. It has like a bright blue, a white, a yellow, and a navy thread in the pack. So I'm gonna try to do that. Typically, I always just go with like a white, a light gray, or sometimes I have gone with like a light like aqua when I did one with iced frappe as the background. But I'm gonna try to stick to the colors. We'll see how that goes. My plan for this one is kind of following the design when I quilt it. So I'm just gonna take my foot and I'm gonna line it up and just stitch around the design. Probably on both sides. And then when I get that done, then I'm gonna probably try to fill in these areas a little more because I like mine to be a little denser, not too dense, but about an inch to an inch and a half apart. So some of these areas I might like fill it in a little bit. We'll see. I'm excited to quilt this one. Hopefully maybe I can get some quilting done tomorrow. The kids have a few Zooms tomorrow for school. So we'll see. Maybe I can get some quilting done before they wake up. So this week's giveaway. So last week's giveaway was a bundle of Emily Dennis's quilts from Quilty Love. I know everybody knows who she is. She's like awesome. She has a lot of great patterns. And Dory from the Quilt Along group won that prize. So I actually dropped it off at the post office this morning when I was heading to get my groceries. This week's prize is, I left it in my family room. It's a bunch of quilting tools from Clover. So they generously donated a bundle of quilting tools for you all. And you will also win 4 of my quilt patterns. You can either choose digital or paper pattern. I can just slip them in with the box with all the quilting tools. And they're your choice. You get a pick. Since some of you have a lot of my patterns, I want you to be able to choose which 4 you would like, since I don't want to give you ones you guys already have. So to win this week's giveaway, you need to post a picture of one of the following or all of them. You can post a picture of you basting the quilt. You can paste a picture or all basted with a bunch of pins in it, or while you're basting it, spray basting it. You can post a picture of you quilting the quilt. You can post a picture of you adding the binding to the quilt. Or you can post a picture of the finished quilt. Because I know a lot of people aren't going to be able to get the quilt totally finished by next Wednesday. But I want you guys to try to start finishing it. Because I know a lot of times we get these tops done and then they just go in a pile and they just sit in that pile for years. So I want these quilts to become cozy quilts and usable. So let's get started on finishing our quilts. And I don't know, I may jump on here next week to show you my progress and see how you guys are all doing and announce the winner of the giveaway. So I guess I may see you guys on here next week. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to get going. I don't know if you guys can hear my kids playing outside. I told them they either have to do schoolwork or play outside during my video. And they chose outside because that's a lot funner than schoolwork, you know. All right, so I will be on here next Wednesday. I'm not sure what time, just to a little tiny check-in because I don't have to show you anything because you guys will be all done. And we'll all have nice cozy quilts to either gift to people or to sit under and enjoy them. Oh, good, Tanya. I'm so happy you enjoyed the quilt along. I hope everybody else had fun. I know this is a really stressful time in people's lives. And so it's nice just to have a little fun project to do and try not to think about all the other stress in life, right? So I hope you guys have a great day, a great week, and I will see you guys next Wednesday.